Bumpy Johnson was Frank Lucas's mentor. What Frank did the night Bumpy died made him Harlem's king. July 7th, 1968, 1:47 a.m. Frank Lucas was driving Bumpy Johnson home from Wells' restaurant when Bumpy grabbed his chest. "Pull over." Bumpy's voice was tight, strained. Frank looked in the rearview mirror. Bumpy's face was gray, sweating, his hand clutching his chest like he was trying to hold his heart inside his body. "Boss, you okay?" I said, "Pull over now." Frank yanked the Cadillac to the curb on 146th Street. Bumpy opened the door, stumbled out, fell to his knees on the sidewalk. Frank was out of the car in seconds. "Bumpy, Bumpy, talk to me." Bumpy looked up at Frank. His eyes were scared. Bumpy Johnson, the man who'd stared down the Italian Mafia, who'd survived 20 years in prison, who'd ruled Harlem with an iron fist, was scared. "Frank," Bumpy's voice was barely a whisper, "get me home. I need to die at home, not on the street like a dog." "You're not dying. I'm taking you to the hospital." "No." Bumpy grabbed Frank's arm. His grip was weak but desperate. "Home, Frank. Take me home, please." Frank hesitated. Every second mattered. The hospital was 10 blocks away, but Bumpy was begging, and Frank had never refused Bumpy anything in 15 years. "Okay, boss. Okay, I gotcha." Frank lifted Bumpy, this giant of a man who weighed 220 pounds, and carried him to the car, laid him across the back seat. Then Frank drove like hell toward Bumpy's brownstone on 141st Street. He ran every red light, hit 70 miles per hour on residential streets, praying to God he wasn't about to watch his mentor die in the back of a Cadillac. "Frank," Bumpy's voice from the back seat. "Yeah, boss, I'm here. We're almost there. Just hold on." "Stop the car." "What? No, we're 2 minutes from—" "Stop the car, Frank. I need to tell you something." Frank pulled over, turned around. Bumpy was lying across the back seat, his breathing shallow, his face the color of ash, but his eyes were clear, focused. "Listen to me very carefully, because I don't have much time. When I die, and I'm dying, Frank, don't argue with me. When I die, there's going to be a war for Harlem. The Italians are going to try to take it. The Chinese, every hustler with a crew is going to think they can run my territory." Frank's throat tightened. "Boss, shut up and listen. You're the only one I trust. You're the only one smart enough, loyal enough, and hungry enough to hold this together. But you're going to have to do something bold, something nobody expects, something that makes every gangster in New York realize you're not just my driver, you're my successor." "What do I do?" Bumpy coughed, blood on his lips. "Go to my safe in my bedroom, behind the picture of Marcus Garvey. The combination is 7/15/43, my birthday. Inside there's $250,000 cash. Take it, all of it." "Bumpy, I can't." "Yes, you can and you will. That money is yours. But Frank, listen to me. Don't use it to run. Don't use it to hide. Use it to make a statement. Show Harlem that you're not afraid. Show them you're not a coward. Show them you're a king." "How?" Bumpy's eyes were closing. "You'll know. When the moment comes, you'll know. Trust your instincts. And Frank, yeah, boss, don't trust anybody. Not the Italians, not the cops, not your friends. The only person you can trust is yourself. Power makes people do terrible things, even good people. So trust nobody." Bumpy's hand went limp. His breathing stopped, and Frank Lucas sat in the driver's seat of a Cadillac on 146th Street, holding the hand of the only father figure he'd ever known, watching him die. Frank didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't panic. He just sat there, holding Bumpy's hand, feeling the weight of what just happened. Bumpy Johnson was dead, and Frank Lucas, a country boy from North Carolina, who'd been Bumpy's driver, his assistant, his shadow for 15 years, was now sitting on $250,000 and a dying man's blessing to take over Harlem. But first, Frank had to get Bumpy home. He drove the last 2 blocks to Bumpy's brownstone, carried Bumpy's body inside, laid him on his bed, called Bumpy's wife, Maisie. "He's gone," Frank said when she answered. "Heart attack. He died in the car. I brought him home like he asked." Maisie screamed, then cried, then went silent. "Where are you, Frank?" "I'm at the house with him." "Stay there, I'm coming." Frank hung up. Then he walked to Bumpy's bedroom, found the picture of Marcus Garvey, pulled it off the wall. There was the safe. Frank dialed the combination, 71543. The safe opened. Inside, stacks of cash, bundled hundreds. Frank counted it. $250,000, exactly like Bumpy said. But there was something else. An envelope. Frank's name written on it in Bumpy's handwriting. Frank opened it, read the letter inside. "Frank, if you're reading this, I'm dead, and you're about to make the biggest decision of your life. Do you run or do you fight?" Most men would run, take this money and disappear, start over somewhere safe. But you're not most men. You're Frank Lucas, and I didn't spend 15 years teaching you the game so you could run when things got hard. I taught you so you could rule. Here's what you need to know. The Italian Mafia is going to come for Harlem the second they hear I'm dead. They've been waiting for this moment for 20 years. They're going to offer you a deal. Work for them, pay them tribute, be their black face in Harlem while they take 40% of everything you make. Don't take the deal. The moment you take their deal, you're finished. You'll never be free. You'll spend the rest of your life working for white men who see you as a tool, not a partner. Instead, do what I never had the courage to do. Cut them out completely. Go directly to the source. Find your own suppliers. Build your own operation. Keep 100%. It's going to be dangerous. They're going to threaten you, maybe try to kill you. But if you're smart, and you are, you'll survive. And when you survive, you'll be the most powerful black man in New York. One more thing. At my funeral, make a statement. Show Harlem that you're not afraid, that you respect the old king enough to honor him properly, that you have the resources and the vision to be the new king. I can't tell you what to do, but I know you'll figure it out. You always do. I'm proud of you, Frank. You're the son I never had. Now go be the king I always knew you could be. Bumpy. Frank read the letter 3 times, then folded it, put it in his pocket, and stood in Bumpy Johnson's bedroom, holding $250,000 cash with a dead mentor on the bed and a choice to make. Run or fight. Hide or rule. Be somebody or be nobody. If you're already hooked, hit that subscribe button right now because what Frank does in the next 72 hours is going to change organized crime forever. Frank Lucas chose to fight. Mae Johnson arrived at the brownstone 30 minutes later. She walked into the bedroom, saw Bumpy lying on the bed, and collapsed. Frank caught her, helped her to a chair. She cried for 20 minutes. Frank stood there, silent, letting her grieve. Finally, Maisie looked up. "Did he say anything before he died?" "He told me to take him home. Said he didn't want to die on the street." Maisie nodded. "That sounds like Bumpy. Always worried about respect, even at the end." She looked at Frank. "What are you going to do now, Frank?" "What do you mean? Don't play stupid. I know my husband. I know he had plans for you. I know he saw you as more than just a driver. So what are you going to do? Run or stay?" Frank met her eyes. "I'm staying. Then you're going to need help, because every gangster in New York is going to come for you. The Italians, the Chinese, Nicky Barnes and his crew. They're all going to want a piece of what Bumpy built, and they're going to see you as weak, as easy prey." "Let 'em." Maisie raised an eyebrow. "You sound confident for a man who's about to get eaten alive."
"I'm not going to get eaten alive. I'm going to do something at Bumpy's funeral that's going to make every gangster in Harlem understand that I'm not Bumpy's driver anymore. I'm Bumpy's successor." "What are you going to do?" Frank told her. May's eyes went wide. "Frank, that's insane." "It's bold. It's suicidal. It's what Bumpy would want. He told me to make a statement, so I'm going to make one that nobody can ignore." May stared at Frank for a long moment. Then she smiled. "You know what? Bumpy was right about you. You're crazy, but you're the right kind of crazy, the kind that survives. Over the next 3 days, Frank Lucas planned Bumpy Johnson's funeral. He called every preacher, every politician, every community leader in Harlem, made sure they knew Bumpy was dead, made sure they'd be at the service. He leaked the date and time to the newspapers, made sure the Italians would hear, made sure the Chinese would hear, made sure every hustler, dealer, pimp, and gangster in New York would know when and where Bumpy Johnson was being laid to rest. Frank wanted a crowd. The bigger, the better, because what he was about to do needed witnesses, lots of witnesses. On the morning of the funeral, Frank went to the bank, withdrew $100,000 in cash. The teller looked at him like he was crazy. "Sir, that's a lot of cash to be carrying around." "I'm going to a funeral." "You're bringing $100,000 to a funeral?" "It's for the deceased." The teller didn't ask any more questions, just counted out the money, bundled it, put it in a briefcase. Frank took the briefcase and walked out of Chase Manhattan Bank, carrying every penny he'd saved in 15 years of working for Bumpy Johnson, his entire life savings. He met May at the church an hour before the service. "You really gonna do this?" she said. It wasn't a question. "I am." Bumpy would be proud and terrified, but mostly proud. The church started filling up. 2,000 people, just like Frank planned. Gangsters in the front rows, Italian mobsters, Chinese Tong leaders, Nicky Barnes and his crew, all of them dressed in black, all of them pretending to mourn, all of them calculating. Frank watched them from the back of the church, saw them whispering, saw them pointing at the casket, at each other, already dividing up Bumpy's empire before the man was even in the ground. Frank waited until the church was completely full, until every seat was taken, until people were standing in the back. Then Frank Lucas walked down the center aisle carrying the briefcase. Every head turned. Who was this? Oh, Bumpy's driver. People went back to their conversations. Frank didn't sit down. He walked straight to the casket, set the briefcase on the floor, and opened it. Drop a comment right now if you can guess what Frank's about to do, because this moment is about to make him a legend. The church went silent. Frank reached into the briefcase, pulled out a stack of $100 bills, $10,000, and placed it on Bumpy Johnson's chest. Inside the open casket, people gasped. What the hell was he doing? Frank pulled out another stack, $10,000, placed it on the casket, then another, and another, and another. 10 stacks, $100,000 in cash, stacked on top of Bumpy Johnson's body in front of 2,000 people. The entire church was frozen. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Frank Lucas had just put his entire life savings into a dead man's casket. Then Frank turned around, faced the crowd, and spoke. "My name is Frank Lucas. For 15 years, I was Bumpy Johnson's driver, his assistant, his student. And Bumpy taught me something important. He taught me that in this world, respect isn't given, it's earned. You earn respect by showing up, by being loyal, by doing what others won't do." Frank gestured to the casket. Bumpy Johnson was the greatest man Harlem has ever known. He protected this community, gave jobs to people nobody else would hire, stood up to the Mafia when nobody else had the courage. And when he died, he didn't die with millions in the bank. He died with honor, with dignity, with the respect of everyone who knew him.
Frank's voice got harder. "Now I know what all of you are thinking. You're thinking Bumpy's dead and now Harlem is up for grabs. You're thinking you can walk in here and take what he built, divide it up among yourselves like it's a business you just bought." Frank pointed at the Italian mobsters. "You think you're gonna put your people in charge, collect your tribute, run Harlem like you run everything else in this city." He pointed at Nicky Barnes. "You think you're next in line, that because you're young and ambitious, you deserve to take over." Frank shook his head. "You're all wrong, because Bumpy didn't build this empire for you. He built it for Harlem, for the people, and he left it to someone he trusted to protect it. He left it to me." Nicky Barnes stood up. You're nobody." Frank didn't flinch. "I was nobody. I'm not nobody anymore, because I just proved something none of you can prove. I just proved I'm willing to sacrifice everything for respect. I put $100,000, my entire life savings, into Bumpy's casket. Not because I'm rich, because I understand what matters. Loyalty, honor, respect, things none of you care about. Frank locked eyes with the Italian mobsters. You want Harlem? You're gonna have to go through me. And I'm not Bumpy. Bumpy played by the old rules, made deals, paid tribute. I'm not playing by those rules. Starting today, Harlem belongs to Harlem. You want to operate here? You ask my permission. You pay me, not the other way around. The church erupted, people shouting, mobsters threatening. But Frank Lucas stood his ground. He'd made his move, put everything on the line, and now there was no going back. Smash that like button if you can't believe Frank just did that, because the aftermath is gonna shock you even more. Frank Lucas walked out of Abyssinian Baptist Church and got into his car. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline. He just claimed a criminal empire in front of 2,000 witnesses, declared war on the Italian Mafia, challenged Nicky Barnes, and backed it up with $100,000 that proved he was serious. Now came the hard part, surviving. Frank drove to a safe house in the Bronx, a place nobody knew about. Not May, not his crew, nobody. He needed to think. The phone rang within an hour, a payphone number Frank recognized. He answered. Yeah, Frank Lucas? The voice was Italian, thick Bronx accent. Who wants to know? Carmine Tremonti, acting boss of the Lucchese family. We need to talk. Frank's blood went cold. Tremonti ran one of the 5 families. If he wanted to talk, it meant Frank's speech at the funeral had gotten attention. Dangerous attention. Talk? Not on the phone. Ralph's restaurant, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Come alone. The line went dead. Frank sat there staring at the phone. Ralph's restaurant was Mafia territory. Going there alone was suicide. But not going was worse. It would make Frank look scared. And in the gangster world, fear is death. The next night, Frank walked into Ralph's. The restaurant was empty except for one table. Carmine Tremonti sat there with 6 bodyguards, all of them staring at Frank like he was a dead man walking. Frank sat down. Tremonti poured wine. You got balls, kid, I'll give you that. Most men wouldn't talk to us the way you did at that funeral. I wasn't talking. I was stating facts. Tremonti smiled. Facts. I like that. Here's a fact for you. Bumpy Johnson paid us 20% of everything he made in Harlem. That was the deal. He kept the peace. We let him operate. Everybody was happy. I'm not Bumpy. No, you're not. Bumpy was smart. Knew when to bend. You're stiff, rigid. That's gonna get you killed. Frank leaned forward. Or it's gonna make me rich. Because here's what I know that you don't. Harlem doesn't want to work with the Mafia anymore. They're tired of white men taking 20% of black money. They're tired of being told what to do in their own neighborhood. But they'll work with me because I'm one of them. I understand them. I respect them. And you think that's enough? I think loyalty is worth more than fear. Bumpy ruled through loyalty.
That's why people loved him. That's why they die for him. You rule through fear. That's why people betray you the first chance they get. Tremonti's face hardened. You're insulting me in my own restaurant. I'm telling you the truth. You can kill me for it, but that won't change the fact that Harlem doesn't want you. They want me. Tremonti stared at Frank for a long moment. Then he laughed. You know what? I like you, Frank Lucas. You're either the bravest man I've ever met or the dumbest. I haven't decided yet. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you 3 months. 3 months to prove you can run Harlem without us. If you can do it, if you can make money, keep the peace, hold your territory, then we'll respect your independence. But if you fail, if there's violence, if you lose control, if people start dying because you don't know what you're doing, we step in, we take over, and you disappear. Deal? Frank extended his hand. Deal. They shook. Frank had just bought himself 3 months. 90 days to build an empire from nothing. 90 days to prove the Mafia wrong. 90 days to become what Bumpy always knew he could be, a king. Frank walked out of Ralph's alive. That was step one. Step two was harder, actually building the empire. The next morning, Frank called a meeting. Every dealer who'd worked for Bumpy, every enforcer, every hustler, 30 men total. They met in a warehouse on 125th Street. Frank stood in front of them. Bumpy's dead. Some of you are thinking about leaving, working for someone else, starting your own thing. I don't blame you. You don't know me. You don't trust me. All you know is I was Bumpy's driver. But here's what I want you to know. I learned everything from Bumpy. How to move product, how to avoid police, how to keep the peace, how to make money. And I learned one more thing, how to be loyal. Bumpy was loyal to this community, to you, and I'm going to be the same way. Work with me and you'll get rich. Betray me and you'll disappear. It's that simple. One of the dealers, a guy named Jerome, stood up. Why should we trust you? You ain't never run nothing. You just drove Bumpy around. You're right. I haven't run anything yet, but I'm going to. And here's how I know. Because I just negotiated with the Mafia and got 3 months to prove myself. Because I put $100,000 in Bumpy's casket to show Harlem I'm serious. And because I'm standing here right now instead of running away. That takes guts. And guts are what you need to survive in this game. Jerome sat down. Nobody else challenged Frank. Good, Frank said. Now, here's the plan. We're going to do something Bumpy never did. We're going to cut out the Italians completely, find our own suppliers, keep 100% of the profit. It's going to be dangerous. The Mafia is going to push back. But if we're smart, we'll survive. And when we survive, we'll be richer than anyone in Harlem has ever been. One dealer raised his hand. Where are you going to get the product? Frank smiled. Leave that to me. Over the next 2 months, Frank Lucas did what no black gangster had ever done before. He flew to Southeast Asia, met with suppliers in the Golden Triangle, negotiated directly, cut out every middleman, and created a heroin pipeline that brought 95% pure product directly to Harlem at a fraction of the cost the Italians charged. Frank called it blue magic, and it changed everything. Within 60 days, Frank controlled 60% of Harlem's heroin trade. Within 90 days, he controlled 80%. The Mafia couldn't compete. Frank's product was better, cheaper, and more reliable. Carmine Trianti called Frank back to Ralph's. How the hell are you doing this? I told you I'm smarter than you think. Trianti shook his head. Bumpy was good, but you're something else. You just did in 3 months what took Bumpy 20 years. I don't know whether to respect you or kill you. Respect me, it's easier. Trianti laughed. Deal's a deal. Harlem's yours. But Frank, don't get cocky. The moment you think you're untouchable, that's when you fall. I'll remember that. Hit that subscribe button right now if you want to see
how this empire ends. Because Frank's about to make a mistake that costs him everything. For the next 5 years, Frank Lucas was the king of Harlem. From 1968 to 1973, Frank made over $100 million. He owned buildings, had homes in 3 states, drove Rolls Royces, lived like royalty, and he did it by staying invisible. While Nicky Barnes flaunted his wealth, wore furs, drove Benzes, got his face on the cover of New York Magazine, Frank stayed quiet, operated in the shadows, kept his head down. That's what Bumpy taught him. The silent man lives, the loud man dies. Frank lived by that rule until he didn't. March 8th, 1971, the fight of the century. Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier, Madison Square Garden. Frank got ringside seats, and he made a decision that would destroy everything. He wore a chinchilla coat, a $50,000 floor-length fur coat that screamed, "I'm rich." Frank sat ringside with his wife, Eva, smiling, laughing, enjoying the fight. And across the arena, a detective named Richie Roberts was watching. Richie had been hearing rumors about Frank Lucas for 2 years, a black heroin dealer who somehow had unlimited product, who never got arrested, who operated with impunity. Richie couldn't figure out where Frank's heroin was coming from until he saw that coat. Nobody wears a $50,000 coat unless they're a drug dealer.
That coat was the proof. Richie started investigating Frank the next day. 4 years later, in 1975, Richie Roberts and the DEA raided Frank's house in New Jersey, found $584,000 in cash, heroin, ledgers, evidence. Frank was arrested, facing life in prison. And as Frank sat in that jail cell, he thought about Bumpy, about the letter, about the warning. Don't get cocky. The moment you want people to see you're rich, you're finished. Frank had stayed silent for 5 years, built an empire, made $100 million. Then he wore a chinchilla coat to a boxing match, and that one moment of vanity destroyed everything. But Frank wasn't done. He called Richie Roberts. "I'll tell you everything. Everyone, the whole operation, corrupt cops, mafia connections, all of it. But I want a deal." Richie agreed. Frank Lucas became an informant. His testimony led to over 100 arrests, corrupt NYPD detectives, mafia bosses, drug dealers. Frank's cooperation destroyed the French Connection drug network, cleaned out the NYPD's most corrupt unit, changed law enforcement in New York forever. Frank was sentenced to 70 years, reduced to 15 because of cooperation. He served 7, got out in 1981. And when Frank walked out of prison, he was broke. The government had seized everything, his money, his houses, his cars, all of it gone. Frank tried to go straight, worked with kids, told them not to make his mistakes. He lived quietly in New Jersey until he died in 2019 at age 88. And people asked, was it worth it? Frank's answer was always the same. The night Bumpy died, he gave me a choice, run or fight. I chose to fight. And yeah, I lost everything, went to prison, lost my money. But for 7 years, I was the king of Harlem. I built something nobody thought a black man from North Carolina could build. I proved the Mafia wrong. I proved everyone wrong. Was it worth it? Ask me that when I was sitting ringside at the Ali fight in a $50,000 coat. Ask me that when I was making $1 million a day. In those moments, hell yes, it was worth it. But then Frank would get quiet, and he'd say, but ask me that when I was in prison, when my wife left me, when my kids wouldn't talk to me, when I realized I destroyed my life over a coat. In those moments, no, it wasn't worth it. Frank Lucas's story is a tragedy, but it's also a lesson. The night Bumpy Johnson died, Frank Lucas made a choice. He chose to be somebody instead of nobody. He chose power over safety. He chose risk over comfort. And for 7 years, Frank Lucas lived like a king. Then he fell hard. But that one night, July 7th, 1968, when Frank carried Bumpy Johnson's body home, when he opened that safe, when he read that letter, when he decided to put $100,000 in a casket and claim a throne nobody thought he deserved, that night changed Frank's life forever. Because Frank Lucas proved something important. You don't have to be born into power to claim it. You don't have to wait for permission. You don't have to play by their rules. You just have to be bold enough to take what's yours and smart enough to hold on to it. Frank was bold, but he wasn't smart enough to stay invisible, and that's what cost him everything. Leave a comment telling me what you learned from Frank's story, because this is more than just a gangster tale. It's a lesson about ambition, loyalty, and the price of power. Bumpy Johnson died on July 7th, 1968, and on that same night, Frank Lucas was born. Not the driver, not the assistant, the king. For 7 years, Frank ruled Harlem. Then for 7 years, he sat in prison paying for it. But ask Frank if he'd do it differently, and he'd probably say no. Because Frank Lucas understood something most people never learn. It's better to be somebody for 7 years than nobody for 70. Rest in peace, Frank Lucas, 1930 to 2019. The man who went from driver to king in one night. The man who put $100,000 in a casket and claimed a throne. The man who proved that sometimes the boldest move is the right move, even if it cost you everything. Hit that like button one last time if this story changed how you see power, ambition, and respect. Subscribe for more untold stories about the people who rewrote the rules and changed history. Because Frank Lucas didn't just break the rules, he created new ones, and for 7 years, he lived like a god.